we're here with two lessons today, lesson 37 and lesson 39. These lessons are on drawing and comparing pictures of fractions. So let's get started. Pictures show the meaning of a fraction. I used this to show fraction number over number. Here's an example. So if you were asked to draw 3 squares and shade half of each square a different way, so the denominator, which is what this D stands for of a fraction, is going to show us how many equal parts to break it into. And then the numerator is going to tell us how many of these parts to shade. So if I am trying to break this square into 1/2, my denominator tells me how many parts I need. So I need 2 parts. And they have to be equal to show the correct fraction. So I'm going to split that one like that. I'm going to split this one like that, and I'm going to split this one like that. Now my numerator tells me how many of those parts to shade. So for 1/2, my numerator is a 1, which means that I need to shade one of these 2 parts in. There we go. So this is 3 different ways to show 1/2. Another type of example might have you use pictures to compare fractions. So I'm going to have to draw 2 different pictures because I'm going to be comparing 2 different fractions. And here's my steps to do this. So I'm comparing 1/2 to 1/3. The first step is to draw 2 congruent shapes. And don't forget that congruent means same or equal. This will not work if my shapes aren't equal. So I'm going to draw 2 rectangles that are the same size. My next step is to label them by their fraction. So this one is 1/2 and this one is 1/3. My third step is to divide them into parts and shade, and that's what we did in the other example question. So first I'm going to look at my denominator, which is a 2, which means that I need to split this into how many parts? 2 parts, right. And I'm going to do that with one line right down the middle. And then my numerator tells me how many to shade in. So how many should I shade? 1. Good. Good. Now I'm going to do my second one. So for this one, I have a denominator of 3. So I'm not going to cut it in half because I want to put it into 3 equal parts. And that's going to require me to draw 2 lines. So I'm going to draw 1 line here and 1 line here. And now that I have my 3 equal parts, I'm going to shade in whatever the numerator says, which is 1. So I'm going to shade in 1 of these parts. And then my fourth step says compare the shaded area. So which of these 2 figures has more shaded in? Right? The 1/2 has more shaded in. So therefore, 1/2 is bigger or is greater than 1/3. Okay, let's try the same thing for these numbers. So here I have 4/8 and I have 3/4. So I'm going to start by drawing 2 figures. And then I'm going to, after I have my 2 congruent figures, I'm going to label them with their fractions. So this is going to be 4/8 and this is going to be 3/4. And then I'm going to split them into the amount of parts the denominator said. So 8 is going to need 8 parts. And since it is an even number, I'm going to first do it in half, then in fourths, and then cut my fourths in half. It's not perfect, but it's close. And then 3/4 is also an even number, so I'm going to go in half and fourths. Okay, and now I got a shade for 4/8. How many am I shading in? 4, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. And for 3/4, I'm shading in 1, 2, 3 of the parts. And now I need to compare them. So which one has more shaded area in it? Good, 3/4. So that means that 4/8 is less than 3/4. Remember not to just cut the figures in half right away, but to always look at the denominator and see how many parts there are. And the little hint I gave you was if this number is even, then it's okay to cut it in half and then break it into smaller and smaller pieces. But if it's odd, then cutting the figure in half first will really mess you up, like with 1/3, because 3 is odds. So if I had cut it right in half, it would have made it impossible to make 3 equal parts. Well, now you know the whole lesson, so go ahead and get to work.